Hey, Mike, back here with Canadian Musician. Right now, in, I guess, what looks like the artist dressing room here at Nest, Indie Week's going on, conference sessions today. One of the, I guess, big draws at this, or today's conference sessions was the man beside me, probably the most legendary person in the agency market here in Canada, Ralph James, first agent ever inducted into the Canadian Music and Broadcast Industry Hall of Fame. Of course, was founder of the agency group that merged with UTA due to reasons that maybe we'll get into. UTA left. APA jumped at the opportunity, opened its first Canadian office, which Ralph and his partner Jack Ross are running. He's the man behind Nickelback, Marianas Trench, Billy Talent, a whole wealth of Canadian rock bands who have made, I guess, a big impact here and internationally. So there's a lot to talk about. But Ralph, it's a real honor to. I'm surprised actually. This is kind of the first time that we've met, but it's an honor to do so. How you doing?
You know what? I get up early, stay up late. This is. I mean, it's Indie Week has really turned into. It's like a tough. There's conferences everywhere, and it's progressed, and it's great that people are trying to do something a little different.
Yeah. Actually, I'll start with something that I just observed, which I see at all these conferences, which is when you step off the stage there, you get swarmed by artists, handing you business cards, download cards, CDs, trying to make an impression, trying to make a connection with you. You see that at all the panels, whether it's Indie Week, CMW, South by, North by, all these industry conferences. As soon as the panelists, and especially someone with a name and reputation like yourself, steps off stage, they get swarmed. Is that effective? Has there ever been a time when you've actually developed a professional relationship with an artist as a result of something like that, or is there a better way for these people to go about it?
Well, actually, a couple times it has.
Really?
And I always say, I'll tell you what'll happen if you don't do it. Yeah. Nothing. That much is guaranteed. Yeah, I actually do listen to stuff, and but as I was saying in the panel earlier, I have to see a band live to actually understand what it is, and if because with the recording processes now, you can fake your way through some things. But if the songs are real, and I mean, I wouldn't do these things. It's an opportunity for me to meet people, and but I'm happy that they still want to they still want to talk to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get into some of the more, I guess, artist-centric kind of career advice-y type stuff, for lack of a better term, I just want to find out what happened with everything, the transition that's gone on with UTA now leading to, you and Jack running the APA offices, Paradigm moving in and all that. It was only about 2 years after, if I remember correctly, after the agency group, which was a huge success that you and Jack founded, merged with UTA, and then UTA, what seems on the outside to be rather abruptly, decided to kind of pack up its Canadian operation and move out and concentrate just on the UK and US. APA obviously jumped at the opportunity to bring you on board. Paradigm did the same with a number of your agents. So I'm wondering, what was the reasoning? Why would UTA not think the Canadian market valuable enough to keep a Toronto-based office? And then what did they not know, maybe, that APA and Paradigm do know, that they wanted to move in?
Well, the agency group we were like almost 20 years, and we actually sold the company to, I was, a minor partner in that company, but the agency group was sold to UTA. And, they wanted to be in the music space, and they're huge in film and TV and everything, and the agency group didn't have those assets, so it really made sense. It's hard to say, but there were 7 offices of the agency group, 90-something agents, about 3,000 bands. I don't think they quite grasped what the hell they were getting into. They were really great about the whole thing, and when the door was left open, 2 of the biggest agencies in the world, Paradigm and APA, said, right, well, we'll take a shot in Canada. Yeah. I can't comment on what they're thinking was, but you know what? It's everything. Everybody that worked there has got a job, and all of 99% of the artists stuck with their agents because that's the way it works. It's like you're with a person, not a company. So you know what? We're excited. APA has maybe a dozen or more people that used to work at the agency group. So it's not like, and the guy who runs it was a musician and a music agent. And you know what? I said earlier, I wasn't really thinking about starting a new company, but we're excited. It's, we have a fantastic roster. We've got a great international partner, and a small staff, and we're gonna go for it again.
For you, what's the benefit to creating a new office with a very well-established entity like APA versus maybe, I guess, bringing back the agency group or something that you are fully in control of? What was the thinking behind that move?
Well, we wanted when we were fortunate enough to get in business with Neil Warnick, who's the founder of the agency group. The idea was that we had figured out a long time ago that Canada is an amazing place, but there's more people in California than there are in Canada, and that we needed to have international affiliation. We're not visionaries or anything. We're just like, the Canadian market is great, but if we have the opportunity to book our bands worldwide, so we definitely, we could have just started a boutique Canadian thing, but the opportunity to be in business with a company that has, international business, yeah. So that was, it wasn't hard. It wasn't a hard decision.
You've taken some bands from their infancy to arenas and worldwide, massive tours. Bands like, of course, Nickelback probably being the biggest one of, for whatever the hell people say about them, they are one of the biggest bands in the world. And, Josh Ramsey from Marianas Trench has credited you for recognizing the potential in them when they couldn't even sell a place like the Cameron House here in Toronto. And bands like that who have obviously done huge things credit you with seeing something in them before most did. There's a couple parts of this, but first, what's the more important part of that equation, the band or the agent, or how are you complementing each other for these bands to do what they do?
Well, it's the talent. Yeah. We're only facilitators, and like Marianas Trench, when I heard them, I went, whoa, this is highly unusual. These guys must like Brian Wilson, and, which they do. I mean, so for me, I don't have a crystal ball. I go with what I think, and I like things that, obviously I want to sign bands that have potential, but I also signed bands that are left of center, whatever. It's like Nickelback was, incredible. I passed on the band the first time I saw them, which they did mention when UTA closed. That they were one of the first ones to post, and saying and I say what I think to artists, but it's all about the artists and their ability, their craft. That's all that matters. Yeah. And it's a ridiculously difficult business. It's like I said earlier, it's like professional sports. It's like, how many hockey players are there and how many are in the NHL? There's 60,000 people in minor hockey in Ontario. not even way less than 1%. But if you love playing hockey, it's great. If you love being a musician, it's awesome. But the odds are incredibly difficult. I mean, the Rolling Stones they just finished these dates in Europe, massive success. They're all in their 70s. They're still good.
One of the things that all your artists obviously have in common is they're great live bands. Not only great sounding, not only a tight band, but they have presence on stage. They're entertaining bands to watch. And they're very different bands. They go about it very different ways, but there's a magnetism there that makes people want to watch them for obvious reasons. So for you, 'cause, your forte, your job is the live industry. I have found, just as a music fan, there's a lot of bands whose albums I love. I'll put them on at home, I'll put them on in the car and enjoy it, but I see them live and it's kind of boring. You know what I mean? Whereas there's other bands when they have a charisma, they have something that makes you love them on stage, but you put the album on and it's kind of boring. what are you trying to identify in a band? Is it the songs or is it the presence?
I want both. You know, Billy Talent doesn't walk on the stage. Billy Talent hits the stage, and they reproduce their songs with even more energy. Like great bands it is the entertainment business. There are a few artists that stand there and play, and they're great. The Eagles, David Gilmour, whatever, like they don't jump around. Like it's not an energetic, but they're so good. But for me, I want both.
What do you? I guess there's a number of things that you talked about there, but one of the things you brought up is you can't trust a demo anymore, which I thought was a very interesting point. And it makes kind of logical sense once you said it, but it's not something that I'd actually heard someone say before. So I guess, sorry to make you maybe repeat something you said an hour ago, but it was an interesting point that I'd like you to expand on. Is what do you mean by that as an agent you can't trust a demo anymore?
Well, if the song's great, it doesn't matter the quality. It could be a cassette recording, whatever. If the song's great, then I do trust the demo. But if it's super slick, and I'm not sure that these people are actually performing, because there's all kinds of opportunities to use the technology now. So if I hear something that sparks me, then I still have to see it live. Yeah. Because if you can't play, I mean, there are bands that have great material and become great live bands through work, but it requires a huge investment of my time, and I have to believe that the material's that strong that if given the opportunity, they will develop into a great live band. Yeah. If they have both going, awesome. Yeah. And maybe the band's are great live, and some of the material's good. That's okay too. Like, a balance is the key for me. But I mean, that's just me.
What's the health of? I'm not thinking because the Taylor Swifts, the Ed Sheerans, the mega stars are doing as well as superstars ever have in this industry. But what's the health of the live industry at the emerging and kind of intermediate level of the industry? In addition, I should add that in addition to K Musician Magazine, we do professional sound, professional audio production. So I talk to a lot of people that work in the live industry in different parts of it. And one of the things that's been brought up a lot is that budgets for tours are being stretched so thin because more and more people are relying on that live touring to make their income because of everything that we all know has happened to the recorded industry. So, and at the same time, there's so much competition out there for people's entertainment and disposable dollars that we're seeing a pretty tough market out there for live venues, and we're seeing a lot of them closing. And it seems harder than ever to build a healthy live music ecosystem in a city. So what are you assessing as far as the health of that emerging and intermediate live music ecosystem?
Well, Toronto's unbelievable. There must be 50 live venues with bands tonight. Mm-hmm. And there have been a few that closed. Maybe they weren't well run, or it's like the Darwinian theory of natural selection. Like some of them didn't cut it. The competition is fierce, but if the mathematics are very simple. How many people will come to see you and pay what price? If 500 people will come and pay $10 to see you, that's a $5,000 gross. That's real simple math. Yeah. The bands that are really great live, even without conventional airplay, whatever, can turn something into, they can build a career and sustain themselves. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. And like I said earlier, if you don't love it and you don't want to do it and compete with everybody else, then just keep it as a hobby. But I mean, it is tough. I mean, the market here is terrific. Like, I mean, last week there was 2 nights of Guns N' Roses, two nights of Katy Perry, Janet Jackson, and 2 nights of Arcade Fire because the Leafs and the Raptors were on the road. That's who you're competing with. So, but all the clubs, well-run clubs are busy too. So it's tough. There's no question it's tough, though.
Are you involved in, there's Music Canada Live, different venues, organizations are all seemingly rallying behind this notion of a music city strategies. Toronto's kind of led the way here in Canada with regards to this. Music Canada has been heavily involved in this. Are you involved with these groups? And with your involvement then, what are you seeing as the successful strategies? Are these music city strategies more than just a well-intentioned concept? Are you starting to see any kind of tangible results because of it?
Well, you're dealing with government, so government doesn't really understand our business. But it's another one of these situations. If you don't try to make your case and point out the economic impact that music has. I mean, there were 6-7 shows at the Air Canada Centre last week. How much money did that generate? How much tax? I mean, I'm that's out of my field of expertise. But I think it's important that that the Canadian government understand that we are punching way over our weight. The number of successful artists in this country is incredible. Like,
it's probably better now than it's ever been, and that's saying something.
I think so, but I think the idea that we need to keep the pressure on for people to understand that it is a valuable business. I mean, to your point of a few minutes ago, like talking about the entertainment options, like the Leafs are sold out every game, the Raptors, the Jays. I mean, there's no shortage of places you can spend your money. So that but Toronto's a big city, and I think it's important that the work that the lobby groups are doing.
Yeah. When you're booking a band, if it's a buzzed about emerging band playing the shoe, the Horseshoe or something like that, or maybe a more, intermediate level band that's playing theater, soft theaters. I'm just curious when it comes to pricing strategies, ticket pricing strategies between you, the band, the promoter, is there some kind of, what factors into that equation for you for finding that kind of ideal ticket price number where you can kind of maximize profit but not turn away fans, and there must be a lot that goes into that equation.
Yeah, each case is different. Yeah. What you want ultimately you want a full house, so if you price yourself out of the market, but then the premium ticketing, the VIP experience and all that, people will pay extra for a different experience. So it's way more complicated than it used to be, and you can second guess yourself to death. But I think that there's what you don't want to do is be overpriced, and then you go, well, we should have had a higher ticket price because it sold out right away and we left money on the table. You got to listen to the promoter, the instinct of the artist, the manager, the agents. Like collectively, you have to. It's not. Like I said, my crystal ball is a bit cloudy when it comes to that stuff.
We've seen some reports recently. We actually brought up Arcade Fire. I was at their show on Friday night. It was fantastic. I've told a few people, kind of reminded me how much I love the band. And they played to, I'm pretty sure it seemed like a full house. And it seems to be usually the case. The major artists sell it in Toronto. But we've seen a few examples that have got some media attention, whether it's Arcade Fire's, Infinite Content Tour, Jay-Z's new 444 tour, claims at least of major artists not selling what they sold even a couple years ago. Is there something going on at that arena level market, or is this overblown? Is there something to these reports? I'm just interested what your general thoughts on this is.
That's a tough question. I don't know. I don't know. I think that there's so much competition that depending on how it's launched and what if Katy Perry didn't sell out her 2 shows I think it was solid business, but she made an unusual record and threw a curveball, and so that could be a factor. I don't know. I don't know.
And well, Ralph, I'll wrap it up here, but I'm very, very interested and excited to see what happens with APA. from what I understand, you guys are just moving into your new offices. Are you guys looking to kind of just maintain essentially the substantial artist roster that you brought with you? Is APA looking to expand, or what's your plans in the near future with this new endeavor?
Well, always looking for new talent. Yeah. That's, I can't help myself. Signed a band when we didn't even know where we were working. It's like when I saw this band, I was like, oh my God, they're awesome. Like, and we didn't, I was working out of my cell phone at a Starbucks, for a few days there. Anyway, so I think, the developing a full service company, and I mean, the APA is huge in comedy, Louis C.K., Amy Schumer, like arena level, Dave Chappelle, Louis Black, so that is an area that interests me. I was involved with chefs before, and I'm interested in getting back into. I mean, it's hard to say, but I definitely like the idea of having a great roster that we understand and that we're able to take care of. I mean, servicing the artist is all that really matters.
And sorry to kind of tack on here. I know I kind of said we'll wrap up and then ask a question. Now, you see what you said wants to just add on, and it was brought up in the panel there about the question about when a band should actually be looking for an agent. And I'm wondering if it's similar to, a while back for an article, I was talking to a number of publicists about kind of the same question, but with regard to when a band should be working with a publicist. And what a lot of them said is essentially when there's too much demand on that side of your time for you to do it yourself. I'm wondering if that's kind of how it works with agents. Once there's enough demand for you live that it's becoming a drain to book and do all that business yourself, or should it be beforehand? Not the answer for you, but yeah, just what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Each situation is different. Some bands, it's most helpful if the band has an understanding of the dynamics of the live business.
What a lot of publicists told me about the PR side of the business. It's helpful if they have an understanding.
You hire a publicist and you expected all this stuff to happen. So there's no actual real tried and true answer to when you need an agent. We have stringers everywhere. People that when we hear about something and then I go see it, and if it blows me away, then I want to be their agent. So and they maybe not be ready per se, like they don't have a track record or whatever, but I mean, it's important that bands learn how to do it themselves too, so they understand how difficult it is, because it's not easy. There's, I said earlier, how many bands are there? 10 gazillion bands, like that's, and they all want to, but when a band does a dozen people at the first show and 200 at the next one, and it's because people like them. It's a stupid thing. People like them. That gets our attention, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to help them past a certain level. It really comes down to the artist and their craft.
Fantastic. Well, Ralph, it was a real pleasure to finally get to meet you, and even more of a pleasure to pick your brain here a bit. So thank you so much for making the time.
What's left of it. Thank you.